Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to go over how you can start creating your blockchain applications for web, mobile, and even build blockchain games using thirdweb. We're going to cover how to set up these different types of applications using thirdweb and its API keys. A quick overview of what we'll be covering in the video. We'll first go over thirdweb's API keys, what they are, how to create them, and how to edit and manage your API keys. We'll then cover how to start your blockchain applications for web, mobile, and even build blockchain games using our Unity SDK, and how to set everything up using the API keys that we generate. We'll also cover how to migrate your older projects if you were building with thirdweb before August 1st on how to set up your API keys with your existing project. And finally, we'll cover some of the CLI commands that will require that you have an API key in order to use it. So with all of that being said, let's jump on to thirdweb here and let's take a look at our API keys. We're first going to go over our API keys, and this is just a reminder that starting August 1st, 2023, that the API keys will be required in order to use thirdweb's infrastructure services. Now, this is going to include using our SDK, our storage like IPFS, CLI, and also your smart wallets or smart accounts if you are using the ERC4337 smart accounts with thirdweb. It's going to allow you to use the bundler and paymaster services through thirdweb as well. Now, you don't have to use the API key, but it does allow you to use thirdweb's RPCs and IPFS services. So if you don't want to use our API keys, you do have to just provide and override those RPC and IPFS URLs with your own. And just another reminder, if you were using the API keys for your smart wallets or your smart accounts through thirdweb and you're using our old API service, we highly suggest that you create a new API key, follow along here, and use those API keys when using your smart wallets. So with all of that being said, we're on thirdweb's dashboard here. I have my wallet connected, and up here in the tabs, we're going to head over to settings, and this is going to be where we can create our API keys. And again, our API keys are free to create and free to use. We do require them to, again, use those services mentioned before. So once you're in your settings and your API keys here, in the top right, you see the Create API Key button. You can click on that. You can give your API key a name. So we'll just call this Demo API Key. And you'll see two different sections here. So the first one is going to be Allow Domains. So this is where you can put in your domains for your web applications that is going to be using this API key. And this is just to prevent third parties from using your client ID on their own websites, and you can only allow what is allowed in this allow list. Now we're going to go into this a little later on when we start to set up our web applications, but I'm going to leave it blank for now. If you do leave it blank, it denies all access, or you can add a star here and that will allow all access to all domains. But we're going to come back into our API key here and edit this domain once we start building our application. Same thing goes for bundle IDs. This is going to be for Unity and React Native applications. So this is going to be where you put in your bundle ID for your game and your mobile application. And again, we'll go through that when we set up our Unity game and our mobile app with thirdweb. So with this, I'm just going to name it here and I'm going to hit create. Now you'll see that when we create a new API key, we're going to be given a client ID. This is going to be something that we can always grab when we view our API key, but you do want to save your secret key here. So I'm going to copy this, save it on the side here. And you can see here we have just a warning saying to store your secret key in a secret and secure place, to never share it, because you won't be able to retrieve it again if you lose it. And if you do, you'll have to regenerate a new API key. So we have this stored on the side. We'll hit store securely. And you can see here we have our API key set up. We can always copy our client ID right over here. You'll see when it was created, and you'll also see enabled services. So going over like those services we were talking about before, in order to use some of the services through thirdweb, you're going to need this API key. But with that, you can also toggle on and off what services are going to be enabled. So let's take a look really quick. We'll click on our API key here. You can see in the general tab here, it gives us our client ID. It also shows us how to implement our client ID in our SDK here if you need to instantiate our thirdweb SDK within your application. But again, we'll go over that when we get into setting up our different apps. And you have your secret key showing you the same thing. Right here, we have the allowed domains and allowed bundle IDs. We don't have anything set up right now, but we're going to come back in and edit those in just a bit. And of course, here we have services. So again, you can toggle on storage. So this is for IPFS. You can toggle this off completely, or you can toggle and allow just upload or download. We have access to our RPCs, and then we have access for our smart wallets to use the bundler and paymaster services. Now, if I come here to edit, you can see we can now edit these services. So if I don't want storage, I can completely turn off storage, and this API key will not have access to use our IPFS storage. You can do the same thing with smart wallets, RPCs, and so on. In general here, this is again where we can add in our domains, our allowed domains and bundle IDs, which we are going to come back and do once we start building out our applications. So I'm just going to hit cancel there. And at the very bottom here, if you ever need to revoke your API key, you can come here, revoke it, and you can get rid of your API keys. And of course, you can always come back and generate new API keys as well. All right, so now that we have our API key set, we'll start off by building out new applications, and we're going to go over how you can create these applications, set them up with your API key, and start building with thirdweb. So we'll start off with our web application first. I'm going to open up terminal here. So I have my command line opened up here, and I'm going to run npx thirdweb at latest, and I'm going to do create app. Now, this is going to allow us to create any type of application with thirdweb. We're going to do a web app first. So we'll do a web demo is our project name. And you can select the blockchain. We're going to select EVM. And then you can select the framework you want to use. So we're going to do a web application here. So I'm going to select Next.js here. And we'll just select TypeScript for our language. And we'll just change directory into our web demo here and open this up in our code editor. So right here in my code editor, I have my file directory open, and we're going to head into the pages folder, and we're going to go to the _app.tsx file. And this here is where we're going to provide our client ID. So what you may see here is your thirdweb provider, and the thirdweb provider requires these two things. The first thing is going to be the active chain. So this is the chain that your application is going to be interacting with. And you can see we have it set to our active chain variable, which we have set up here to Ethereum. So depending on your chain, we can change it to something like Mumbai, or you can change it to Gurley or Optimism Gurley, whichever chain you're deploying your contracts to and you need to interact with, you can set that here in active chain. Next, we have our client ID, and you can see right here, this is getting our client ID from an environment variable here, which we have set up right here. And over here, you can set your client ID. So we can just grab our client ID really quick, copy that, come back here, paste that in, save our files, and just like that, we now have our client ID set up. And once we have that set up, what we'll also have to do is now add this application to our allowed list for domains. Now we're going to be just running this application locally. So if I come back over to my API keys here and I click on my API key, we're going to edit, and this allowed domain here, we're just going to put in our localhost, and we'll be running this on 3000. So I'm just going to add localhost 3000 here and save. And you can see here our allowed domain is now set for localhost 3000. So let's come back to our application here, and let's open up our terminal in here and run yarn dev. And let's open this up in our localhost 3000. And there you go. We now have our boilerplate code for our thirdweb web application running on our local host. And from here, we can connect our wallet like our MetaMask, and we can now build out our web application. And And that does it for building out your web applications. Again, all we need to do is provide our client ID, which is going to be our API key, into our third web provider and set the active chain. And this will allow us to use all of those infrastructure services that we went over. Next, we'll go over mobile development. So using our React Native SDK and how to set up that as well. So if you want to build a Web3 mobile application, you can use our React Native SDK. And in order to create a project there, we're just going to come back to our terminal here. Let me just clear this out. And we're going to run npx thirdweb at latest. And we're going to create app again. And this one we'll call mobile demo. We'll use EVM again. And this one we're going to use our React Native. And we'll make it an Expo project. And this again will create us a template blockchain mobile application using React Native, and we'll implement our API keys in here and also grab our bundle ID as well. So let's change into our mobile demo and open this up in our code editor. So very similar to how we did our web application, if we head over to the app.tsx file, and then same like our web application here, we'll just add it right under our active chain. We'll have to add our client ID. Just like our web application as well, we'll create an environment, an env environment file here that will store our API key. So coming on the side here, we'll create a new file. Call this .env, and in there we will again paste our API key right here, and you can provide your client ID API key there. And before we run this application on our emulator, just like how we did our web application, we do need to get and allow this application to use our API key. So again, like we said, for mobile apps and Unity games, we're going to need to get the bundler ID. And since I'm going to run this on an iOS emulator, I'm going to come on over to iOS here, and we're going to come into the project folder, and we're going to find the info.plist here. And we're going to scroll down, and you should see a bundle identifier. It kind of looks like this right here. It'll have this type of formatting. Now, if you do change this bundler identifier, you will have to change it in what you allow, but this is just the default one that we have right here. So we're going to come back into our API keys and select my API key here and edit. And under bundle ID, we're going to paste in that one and save. Now you can also run this application on an emulator. You can open up your terminal here and run yarn iOS, and this will run it on your emulator if you're running an iOS emulator. So I have my emulator right here. You can see we are running this thirdweb native React Native third web starter. We can connect wallet. This is an emulator though, so I won't be able to connect it to a MetaMask or anything, but we can run our local wallet, which creates and stores a wallet locally on device. And you can see here we can connect to that wallet as well. And if you wanted to, you could run this through your Xcode. You can run this through Xcode and connect it to your own device if you wanted to run it on that. And if you are doing this on an Android device, unlike the iOS one, you're going to have to get your bundle ID for the Android device. So you'll have to add this as well if you're doing Android. So we're going to come under Android, under the app folder, and then find the build.gradle file here. And then if you scroll on down, you'll see right under here, you'll have your same formatted bundle ID or application ID that you can copy. And that is what you'll add into your allowed domains or bundle ID. And again, that is how we can set up our React Native or mobile blockchain applications by running our npx thirdweb create command and creating our React Native project here. And we can add in our client ID and you build out our blockchain mobile application. So we went over web, we went over mobile. Next, we'll go over Unity, which is our blockchain game development. So first, you want to head on over to our release page here. We'll add this down in the description as well. But you want to download the version 3 beta 4 or newer, this is where we are going to, you can see here, support the thirdweb API keys. So down here, you can just download the Unity package or the Unity SDK. We'll then open up our Unity Hub here. We'll then open up Unity Hub. We'll create a new project. We'll just select 3D Core here, and we'll name this project Game Demo. And we'll create project here. Once our project is created, we'll be brought to our Unity editor. And in the top menu, we can select Assets and Import Package, and then select a custom package to import. We'll then select our Unity SDK package that we downloaded. So we'll make sure that it is the version 3 beta 4, and we'll hit open on that. You'll be brought up with the packages to import from the Unity package. We'll make sure that everything's checked off and hit import. We'll select yes. And once you have imported, you'll see down here in the files, we have our thirdweb folder. Under the core folder, we have our prefabs, and we're going to be looking for the thirdweb manager. What we'll do here is take this thirdweb manager prefab, drag it up into our scene. We'll open up the inspector a little larger here. And in the right-hand side in our inspector, you'll see the thirdweb manager here. And this is where you'll set up basically everything that you need for your Unity game. But in general settings here, you'll see down here, again, active chain. So you can select your active chain that you're going to be interacting with for your Unity game. And at the very bottom here, you're going to have your client ID. So all we need to do is grab our client ID again and paste it right in there. And just like that, that's how simple it is to set up your API and your client ID with your blockchain Unity game. So with that being said, you can then build out your game and you'll be able to use all those infrastructure services from thirdweb. So again, that is how you can start building out your blockchain applications, whether it is a web application, a mobile application, or you're building a game using Unity. You can set up thirdweb very simple with all of these and create new blockchain applications just as we did, and implement your API key. And you can get started very easily to build out your blockchain application. Now, for those of you who already have been building with thirdweb, the next thing we're going to go over is how to migrate and implement the API keys into your existing projects. So again, we'll start off with the web, we'll go through mobile, and then with updating and migrating over your Unity game as well. So over here, I have opened a older application created on thirdweb. This is a web application that we used the thirdweb React SDK with. And if we come back in, or we come down to our package JSON file here, we can see that we're running the thirdweb React SDK here. It is on version 3. And what we're going to do first is just update our SDK here. And we're just going to open up a terminal and we're going to run a yarn add and add, not React Native, thirdweb-dev/React. And once we have that, you can see here, we now have our thirdweb dev React updated to 3.1.4.20. And with that, we're gonna, again, just like how we set it up, our new application, come back to our pages here, the underscore app.tsx file. The thirdweb provider, we have our active chain. We'll also have to provide our client ID. And this is where you can implement your client ID. You can create an env file, store it, and then implement it just like we did the new applications. So if we want to our client ID, we could just, again, create, we'll just create a variable and store it in an env file. So we'll just create a new file here. We'll say .env, and we can get that, store it in our next public template client ID, or you can name this whatever you want, API key. Save that, and let's change this to API key here. And we now have our API key or our client ID set up with our application, and we are ready to go. Same with our mobile application. So let me open up a older mobile application here. So over here, you can see I have an older mobile application open. If I head over to the package.json file as well. We'll look and we have our thirdweb React Native at 0.2.7. And we're going to want to update this to at least 0.2.36. So we will come back we'll open up our terminal here. Let me just close this on the side real quick. And we'll run yarn add React Native. So yarn add the thirdweb-dev/React Native here. And this should give us the latest version of our React Native SDK. So coming back to our package.json file, we can see React Native. We have 0.2.39 now. And coming back to our app.tsx file, this is where we'll have to, under the thirdweb provider, again, provide our client ID. And this is, again, we can add our client ID there. That's what we're calling it. We'll add a new file, .env file. And then save and create and save our client ID in there. And our application is now set up with our thirdweb API key and ready to go. Same thing like we did with our API keys when we created new ones though, you'll have to get the bundle ID and add that into the allowed bundle IDs in order to make sure that this API key works. And now for migrating your older blockchain games built with our Unity SDK, I have an older game here and you can see here we're on our thirdweb manager. If I look in the inspector, we have the required settings here that doesn't have the client ID input field yet. But what we'll do is update the SDK here and we will update it with the newest version, which we can implement that. So the easiest way to do this is find the thirdweb folder in your assets folder here, and we're just going to delete the whole folder. Once the folder is deleted, you'll see that even our thirdweb manager here is going to get an error because we've broke a lot of these things by deleting the prefab. But if we come back up to assets and import package and we select custom package again, we just select the updated version that we want to import, which is going to be the version 3 beta 4. We'll hit open. You'll see that it'll have checked off all the things that we need to import here. So we'll import everything that is checked off. We'll hit yes. And you can see right up here, even our thirdweb manager now is not broken anymore, and we can click on it. And now we have general settings, and under that general settings, we have that input field for our client ID. And all we need to do here is paste in our client ID. And just like that, your Unity game is all set and updated to the new version and ready to use with the thirdweb API keys. And that's how you can migrate and update the SDKs for your web, mobile, and Unity games if you have been building with thirdweb prior to us introducing the API keys. You can simply update those SDK versions and then implement your API keys to your application. Next, we're going to cover thirdweb's CLI, and this is going to contain everything from deploying, publishing, and uploading to our IPFS storage. So if you do use the CLI or any of those, again, infrastructure services, you are going to have to use your API key in order to access them. So we'll jump on the computer and we'll go over that next. So over here, let's first deploy a contract. So I'm going to run npx thirdweb at latest create contract. And we're just going to name this demo contract, and we'll just use hard hat, and this will just be called demo contract, and we'll just make it an empty contract here. So this is if you are building and creating smart contracts with thirdweb and you normally deploy your contracts through thirdweb, you will have to now provide your API key to do so. So right now I don't have an API key logged in. So if I go to demo contract and I run npx thirdweb at latest and we'll run deploy here, what it's going to do is ask me to enter in my API secret key. And what we can do there is grab our secret key, which we stored on the side when we created our API key. And you can pass that through here. And then from there, it'll continue on with deploying out our contract. So we'll let this run really quick. You can see it opens up my browser tab here for me to deploy this blank contract. I'm going to close this out here. And if I come back to my terminal here and I try to run that again, you'll see that I have already logged in with my secret key. So it's not going to ask me for it again. And you can see here, it just goes straight through deploying our contract here. Now, another way you can set this up is if we come back here and we run npx thirdweb log out. This is actually going to log me out, and we will have to again provide our secret key if we run any of our deploy, publish, or upload commands again. We can also run npx thirdweb login. This is going to bring us just to the prompt that requires our secret key. We'll put that in, and with that, we are now logged in to our CLI using that secret key, and we can now run all of our CLI commands. So again, we could change into our demo contract and run npx thirdweb at latest, and we could do something like publish. And once logged in, it won't ask for your secret key or your API key anymore. Now, if you do revoke your API key, you will have to log out and log back in with a new API key that you do generate. And there you have it. You can now start building your blockchain applications and using all of thirdweb's tools using our new API key. And down below in the description, we'll link everything needed for more information, links to our docs and guides to help you out with these API keys, and so you can start building your blockchain applications. Now, if you did enjoy this video and you found some value in it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on more videos on how to build with thirdweb. If you have any more questions or you need more support, you can also join our Discord community. We'll add a link down to that in the description as well. If you need any help migrating your older applications to the new SDKs to support thirdweb's API keys, or if you have any questions in general, our support team is happy to help you out in our Discord channel. Again, the link to that will be down in the description. But again, I hope you folks enjoyed this video, and until next time, see ya.